Living life as a question. Why action does not require certainty. This is the first of two essays exploring a simple but difficult question. How do we live well in a world that no longer offers clear answers? If you've found yourself exhausted by arguments, impatient with certainty, or unsure how to act in a world that no longer feels predictable, this essay is for you and me both. We live in a world that demands answers faster than we can honestly give them. We are expected to know what we think, where we stand, and what should happen next, even as the ground beneath us keeps shifting. Faced with that pressure, most of us reach for certainty. Not because it's true, but because it's stabilizing. And over a lifetime of change work, I've seen this time and time again. People can endure almost anything if they think they know what it is, but admitted not knowing makes people uneasy. The comfort of certainty. People reach for certainty even at the cost of clarity. The billion-dollar question is, why? I don't know. But the old adage that people tend to prefer the certainty of misery over the misery of uncertainty explains a great deal of the distress we see around us today. What unsettles us is not difficulty itself, but not knowing what comes next. Change has always been the only constant. We grow, we age, we lose, we adapt. Nothing stands still for long. Yet we continue to reach for neat explanations and fixed answers, as if the world could be held in place simply by naming it. Explanations give us something to hold on to in a world that no longer behaves the way we expect. Answers can be found to many questions, but our need for them has outpaced the reality we are trying to understand. For the past few hundred years, we have explained the world through a Newtonian lens: linear, rational, measurable, and predictable, where action leads to result. That logic has shaped more than science, it has shaped how we live. We tend to assume that if we do the right things in the right order, we will get the outcome we want. It even shows up in how we approach relationships, which have become quietly transactional. This framework has not been without success. It has powered the Industrial Revolution, modern science, management theory, and capitalism. It also trained us, consciously and unconsciously, to believe that certainty is both possible and desirable. But the world no longer behaves this way. In a shrinking world where information about everything is everywhere, certainty arrives faster than our understanding. We are moving into a more quantum reality, one defined less by linear causality and more by relationships, context, and probability. In this world, relationships matter more than individual parts. Systems are interconnected and adaptive. This shift challenges the very foundation of how we make sense of the world. It helps explain why so many people feel disoriented. We are still using old tools to make meaning in a new reality. And when those tools fail, we lose our footing. It is not surprising, then, that our collective preference today remains for the known over the mysterious. For much of human history, we lived inside belief systems that made room for what could not be known. Religion did not answer everything. It explicitly acknowledged uncertainty. We prayed into it. We gathered weekly to sit with questions larger than ourselves. There was cultural permission not to resolve life's deepest tensions. As societies secularized, we gained many freedoms, but we also lost the shared practice for holding the unknown. The muscle that once allowed us to live with unanswered questions quietly atrophied. We replaced mystery with explanation and reverence with resolution. What we may be experiencing today is not an excess of uncertainty, but a diminished capacity to sit with it. Education offers a clear example. We reward students for supplying the right answers rather than asking better questions. But the future of education, like the future of leadership and life itself, may depend less on finding the right answers and more on learning how to ask better questions. If we are going to live well in a world like this, we have to become more comfortable with complexity. Agency requires motion. I have always believed that the smartest people I know are also the most humble. Not because they lack confidence, but because they have so much of it. They don't feel compelled to speak beyond what they know to be true. And the more they know, the more aware they become of how much they don't know. This matters because our hunger for certainty comes at a cost. It often creates hesitation rather than confidence. We've been trained to believe that only once we have the answer are we allowed to act. Only once we know for sure can we move forward. That belief quietly undermines agency. We use uncertainty as a reason to wait, to delay, to hold back. We tell ourselves we need more information, more clarity, more proof. But in complex systems, that moment rarely arrives. There is a direct relationship between action and confidence. Confidence does not always precede action. Often it follows it. Truth is not found in a single narrow beam of light. It is a tapestry woven from multiple perspectives. So our craving for premature clarity is not strength. It is fear in disguise. Living life as a question means becoming more comfortable acting without guarantees. And it sounds something like this. I don't know, but I'm going to try. It did not work. Good. I learned something. Now I know more than I did before. This is how agency is built, not through certainty, but through motion. In moments of uncertainty, the only way to really know something is to test it. Insights does not arrive fully formed. It emerges through trial. I sometimes think of this as becoming the startup version of yourself, a posture that favors experimentation over perfection, movement over paralysis, small risks rather than no risks at all. This does not mean reckless behavior or outsized bets. It means taking a step even when the outcome is unclear. Just because you do not know doesn't mean you should not try. That mindset changes everything. It turns uncertainty from a reason to wait into a reason to begin. We are far more likely to act ourselves into a new way of thinking than we are to think ourselves into a new way of acting. Speed is not wisdom. In a culture that values instant gratification, our appetite for immediacy makes us think less, reflect less, and pause less. It trains us to confuse immediacy with insight and velocity with understanding. Modern technology compounds this problem by offering answers instantly. When information arrives that fast, it feels more certain, even when it is incomplete, biased, or wrong. There was a time when knowledge traveled slowly. Letters took weeks. News ripened over time. Certainty had a longer gestation period. Today, answers arrive faster than reflection, and we mistake access for understanding. But an answer delivered instantly is not the same as an answer earned. Speed gives us confidence without calibration. This tension is not new. Scott Peck warned about this decades ago in The Road Less Traveled. The desire for instant gratification, he argued, is not a shortcut to wisdom, but one of its primary obstacles. In a nanosecond culture, questions begin to feel inefficient. We want answers quickly so we can move on. But wisdom is not born from speed. It emerges from stillness, openness, and the willingness to pause and reflect. There is patience required to live this way, and it is increasingly rare. The poet Emily Whittle captures it beautifully in her poem. Insights lie in the dark, like seeds waiting for the right season. Some winters are longer than others. Living with questions often feels like winter. Nothing appears to be happening. There is no visible progress, but beneath the surface, something is forming. Not everything is meant to arrive on our timetable. Wrong questions divide. How much of today's conflict comes from people fighting over answers to the wrong questions? Probably most of it, I would argue. We argue about visible issues while overlooking the deeper interconnected structures beneath them. It's like studying the branches of a tree while never examining its roots. Wrong questions divide. The right questions invite. Questions are inherently inviting. They open space for understanding. Answers, by contrast, often shut down conversations. A question asks, why do you feel that way? How did you come to believe this? An answer too quickly declares, this is how it is. Questions open doors. Answers close them. Much of what we call conflict is really about power. Who has it? Who should have it? Power over whom? And for what purpose? But the deeper work is not about winning control over others. It is about reclaiming agency for ourselves. By asking better questions, we become the architects of the life we want to lead, rather than passive participants reacting to forces we do not fully understand. This dynamic shows up at the largest scales as well. As Peter Senge, a leading voice in systems thinking, once many years observed, quote, for decades the world watched as the two mightiest political powers engaged in a race to see who could get fastest to a place where no one wanted to go, end of quote. That is what happens when we fight over answers to the wrong questions. Leading by inquiry. Socrates believed that wisdom was less about having the right answers and more about asking better questions. Not to win arguments, but to uncover assumptions and invite deeper understanding. This posture has shaped how I listen, lead, and relate to others. Agnes Callard is a philosopher at the University of Chicago whose work I've long admired. What I appreciate most is how she brings philosophical rigor to ordinary human questions. In her latest book, Open Socrates, she writes that philosophical humility is not about pretending to know less than you do, but about embracing the wisdom you have yet to attain. I have long believed that leadership is not about control. It is about creating followership. People are not ultimately led by other people. They are led by ideas. We may think we follow individuals or incentives, but what actually moves us are the ideas those individuals stand for. That is why leading by inquiry matters. Asking the right questions invites others into a dialogue rather than demanding allegiance. It creates shared meaning rather than compliance. There is a simple illustration of this idea that has stayed with me for a long time. In Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, Alice asks the Cheshire Cat which road she should take. The cat replies that it depends on where she wants to go. When Alice says she doesn't know, the cat answers that in that case, any road will do. If we have no sense of where we want to end up, our tactics become arbitrary. We move, but not necessarily in a meaningful direction. We make thousands of choices every day, small and large, and because we only get one life, those choices matter. Asking better questions is how we align our actions with what we actually matters. It is how we choose direction rather than drift. In that sense, this question on how to live is not peripheral. It belongs at the center of our lives. Your turn. What question, if asked more honestly and given more space, might change how you move forward right now? See ya.